Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So, here we are. This is a little bit different. I only did this twice, I think, and I only talk about movies once. So, it's a new experience, and well, it's not the best idea, but well, fuck, why not? So, I watched Superman Red Son, and I really don't believe it's a woke movie, or anti-Trump, or pro Bernie. If you already watched one or two of my videos, you already know probably my political leaning, mostly by the jokes that I do. But that doesn't matter that much. The point here is, I do believe it's a good movie, and I don't see like being the Birds of Prey style movie who really has an agenda, or Charlie's Angel type of movie who really does have that agenda, stuff like that. So I want to see his points. I watch until his start, like he kind of start talking about a movie, and that's why I watch. There is a couple points that he makes before, then I will talk. And one thing, it's kind of late for me. I just got out off work, and I pull late night shift. So excuse if I end up fucking up some pronunciation, or maybe sometimes I misremember stuff. So I will ask you I will say I'm sorry for anything that I fuck up. But mainly, I don't think I have the movie very fresh in my mind, so I don't think I'm gonna get a couple. Like I don't think I'm gonna get many points wrong to that. And let's say, Lex, you're amazing in the movie. Fucking hell. So let's go for the video.
Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the DC Comics movie universe. They've recently been shown to get awfully woke in their film releases, culminating in their ultra-feminist all-lady girl power movie called Birds of Prey, which performed so badly at the box office last month, they desperately tried to change the name of the film to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey. But
I will be honest, I didn't watch this movie. The Harley Quinn one. I didn't care to watch, and I don't think I would watch no matter what. It's a very bad movie. A friend of mine watched, and she said he is very like Batman centric, and he said, "Oh, it's a bad movie, don't go." And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna take your word for it." So I kind of agree, and probably I'm not gonna lie, I think he is right calling that a lot of a woke movie, and it's very interesting because it's most likely, if I'm not fairly mistake, it's the first one that DC made. Marvel got Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Black Panther, and those two are pretty much they leaning left. But DC was very neutral until now, I think.
obviously that last-ditch attempt to save the thing wasn't enough to make any money for the project, as we
Oh, I know the TV shows exist, but I try my best to forget they are a thing.
went over extensively at the time, Birds of Prey was just a bad idea from the get-go. It was a movie no one asked for, and it was made in a way that bashed its main audience, male comic book fans like yours truly, and I'm sure many of you watching as well. In addition, Birds of Prey was trying to court an audience that just doesn't exist. Woke, liberal, female comic book fans who spend money. Well, if they
One thing interesting, I think is fair to give my background on comics. I'm not a huge nerd for comics because I have that problem that I don't like to read or watch a series as it's going. I like to sit down and read or watch something that has a point. Like I know there is an ending here. To that thing. But I do read a lot of things from Batman. I read the entire the Batman Who Laughs, the Devastator Batman, all of that thing. Dark Knight Metal, Batman White Knight, Batman Last Night on Earth, Last Night I think. I kind of and I not gonna lie, from DC, my favorite stuff come from Batman because I think it is more realistic. quote unquote. So I do believe it is like it is my stuff, and I like a lot more. But yeah, it's that thing. I prefer stuff that is closed already, so that's why I don't go much for the mainline stuff. That's what I was talking about. That's mostly my background on comics.
They are out there. They're certainly not buying movie tickets or other products in this genre, at least not in high enough numbers to warrant catering to them and trying to pander your projects and media advertising to them either. Regardless, comic book movies keep trying to get more and more woke lately. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been doing it for a long while now, sure. And recently, like in the past month with Birds of Prey, well, DC seems to be trying to catch up on this woke front, and they have another new movie that's getting in on this too. That brings us to the next DC comic book movie release, which has a lot of the same problems with it too, albeit on a smaller scale and in a story that's not exactly completely ruined by it. Today we're talking about the latest DC animated movie release.
That's the thing. I didn't notice being like anything really, really political agenda pushing on this movie. And he is right, and it doesn't fuck up the story. And I will agree with that. So maybe because it is not a bad thing, and that's the thing. I think okay, maybe not because I would say because the amount of stuff that we have on the uh anime on the movie DC front, it was a good move. But that's a lie, and he's gonna point that out very interesting soon enough because that's the part that I already watched of the video. The DC animated stuff is fucking great. I'm gonna give first Red Sun. Go and watch. It's fairly good. I would recommend Gods and Monsters and Flashpoint. Flashpoint is very good. Gods and Monsters is a very interesting take.
Called Superman Red Sun. And for those who don't know, Superman Red Sun is a direct to DVD animated feature film. And although a much smaller project than their theatrical live action releases, the DC home animated releases are certainly becoming more and more noteworthy every year. They usually come out with a couple of these a year, and they can be pretty damn cool too. Almost as good or sometimes better than their theatrical movies. DC animated features often get
Yeah,
more
they are
leeway
always
too, and
better.
more room to explore other outside stories and alternative timelines and other more exaggerated scenarios as well. For example, in the 2013 DC released movie called Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, a story was told where the Flash sort of travels to this alternate timeline and universe where there's no Justice League or team of superheroes. Instead, heroes like Aquaman and Wonder Woman have turned into these brutal dictators and conquerors of much of the globe. And another example like this is a DC animated film from 2018, which has a similar story, which was told in the released film called Batman Gotham by Gaslight, a sort of retro Victoria era
I didn't
version of the
watch this one,
Batman
but
storyline. Now,
mm,
not to bore you too much with these prefaces, but these side story style movies are what directly led to today's subject too. If you hadn't guessed already, the latest DC animated release called Superman Red Sun, well, it's an alternative history kind of story too. This time the premise is basically this is what would have happened if Superman's ship crash landed in Russia instead of the United States. Originally, Superman was of course a baby sent from his exploding planet of Krypton, and in the original origin story, Superman lands in the Kansas state of America, and he's raised by his adoptive American parents, the Kents. But in the Red Sun movie we're talking about, Superman instead lands in Russia, and instead of growing up to assist the Americans and the capitalists, Superman instead becomes a pro-communist Russian, or a Soviet as they were known back then. Yes,
well, it's kind of clearly then that is the point of the story, and he really end up becoming more of a Soviet propaganda machine and a military stuff, mostly on the beginning. And well, that's the thing. But the story is not revolved only around that. I think, and that's the thing. Even though, yeah, Superman is in the title, I s- I don't know if this is like, oh, Superman is the main character, the sole main character. I see the story is more about the fight, the conflict, the indirect conflict between Superman Lex Luthor, and that is the reason why I don't know. That's the point. The story is not put him as the main character and put Lex Luthor in the same level as him. So both of they share. It's a you're watching the two play chess, quote unquote. There is even that thing on the movie.
This story begins in the late 1940s, where Superman crashes in Russia right after World War II, right as the Cold War started between the US and the Soviets. And as you might have guessed already, this Soviet Superman, well, he goes on to greatly change his alternative world's history and timeline. And while we won't be
Yes.
discussing all of this movie's plot points, but there will be a few spoilers here and there though, so we can go through things and explain how this Superman Red Sun film got so woke and pro.
Okay, I gonna be. I don't know. I probably gonna do more spoilers than him. I think because I don't know. Maybe, for example, if there is a counterpoint on the movie for what he's placing, I would like to uh, point that out. So yeah, I will. Maybe there is points on the movie, then counterpoint. So if he doesn't talk here, I will need to point that out. And well, to the conclusion, I have to say then I have the mostly quote unquote opposite point of view, and I think there is enough things on the movie that showed that. So I will say that I will probably spoil a little bit more because well, we're gonna have what he's spoiling plus what I am putting on.
SJW. First of all, there's the obvious pro communist angle here. The whole point of the story is to kind of show you how the Soviets were, in a way, just like us, and it wants you to sympathize with them. And in reality, communists aren't these evil monsters like how many of us grew up believing in the US. And
I disagree with that point. During the movie does well. The fact is, there's not many characters. We roll around with mainly Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Lex Luthor, Lois Lane, and maybe Hal Jordan. I think that was all of the main cast of the movie itself. So, and it has to be honest, you only have two characters that are communists. Like not even communists; they are the Soviet counterparts of the thing, being Superman and Wonder Woman, quote unquote. Stalin does exist, and he's very portrayed as a very well. He's portrayed as a ruthless dictator, B, a coward.
Western worlds. And while this is true, and not all communists were terrible, of course, but certainly their governments were very bad, and their ideas were terrible and won't work. Communists were authoritarian, murderous, corrupt, and devastating people. So trying to human
And that's the same way that the communist is they are portrayed on the movie as it is right now. I don't believe they changed that much. Like there's still gulags. There's still a lot of the wrong. The Korean War happened. I don't think Vietnam happened. And Stalin is still placed as a ruthless dictator, and Superman doesn't like fall far from the tree on that aspect. He's still really like when he's in command of the Soviet Union, he is a very evil guy to the point where that I don't know if that is how to place it, but he is really placed like the evil guy here. Uh, they even refer as the Soviet Empire and not even as the Soviet Union after him take over. Sorry, I got the burps.
humanize them too much here, like how this movie does, it is very telling, especially when you consider the timing of this Superman Red Sun release. Do we think it's just a coincidence that this pro communist propaganda is coming out in early 2020, an election year, and right at the same time this socialist and communist stuff is trying to come up in liberal?
I don't think this is a socialist propaganda because, well, If you watch the movie until the end, you will know that this, well, even with Superman, a invulnerable alien, the Soviet Union fails. So, there you go.
Politics as we speak. Bernie Sanders, for example, is about to become the first socialist to be nominated for president here. Maybe. We'll see. But he could still get screwed out of that nomination again, like when Hillary stole it from him last time. But I'm pretty sure it's safe to say the liberals and Democrats at DC Comics making this Red Sun movie, well, they appear to be Bernie bros trying to help his communist causes. And that's why they're coming out with this movie just 6 months before our presidential election.
If they really are trying to do that, I have to say they are doing a very bad job because, look, every communist character is a piece of shit on this movie. But, well, here we go.
Making Superman a sympathetic communist and trying to show the nuance and similarities of both sides in the Cold War at a time like this, well, the propaganda pushing here is all too apparent. And believe it or not, but we're just getting started with this stuff. Besides being pro-communist and making Superman a virtual Bernie bro, this movie also has some not so subtle jabs at Americans and capital.
Uh, question here, because I'm not American, so maybe my terminology is wrong. Bernie bros are the liberals that are like socialists. Oh, Bernie is amazing, right? If that is the point, like Bernie is amazing, socialism is magnificent, and with communism the world is gonna be amazing. It's not right, but I think during the movie, Superman goes to the whole 9 yards here. He started as this liberal guy who sit down and say, "Oh, communism is great. We gonna do and save all everyone." And like, I don't know if you ever talk about us like some of those, and I'm noticing them saying like a lot. But do you ever talk with some of those liberal kids nowadays? Holy shit, I'm getting old. I'm talking about those liberal kids like I'm 2,000 years old. But they're gonna say, "Oh no, communism. If I was in Stalin place, it would be all rainbows, chocolate, and we would all be riding on unicorns." That is Superman on this fucking movie. Until reality slap him in the face with a dick.
Particularly, many have noticed what seems to be pretty obvious anti Trump digs in this movie as well, that come off pretty awkward and somewhat hilarious too, at least for us. For example, when Superman first visits America at about 10 minutes into the movie, he's greeted by a reporter named Lois Lane. When she asks Soviet Superman for an interview, he replies by first insulting her husband for being a capitalist, and then Superman.
Well, he is the fucking Soviet Superman, so of course he's gonna have a fit by insulting someone for being a capitalist. But I don't. But yeah, okay.
Man says the press is the enemy of the people. He replies by first insulting her husband for America at
Let's
about
go
10
back a
minutes into
little.
the movie. He's greeted by a reporter named Lois Lane. When she asks Soviet Superman for an interview, he replies by first insulting her husband for being a capitalist, and then Superman says the press is the enemy of the people. Now, if this line sounds familiar to you, it should, and that's because the press is the enemy of the people is something that's been said by our president, and it's a frequent mantra of Donald J. Trump as well. And since Superman plays a sort of ominous possible bad guy at the beginning of the film here, I think it's safe to say this is a dig at the real world President Trump as well. They're using his quote and trying to make it look bad and like the press is being oppressed, when really they are the enemy of the people and they lie to us and.
Okay, I can use a little bit of a background on my life experience. During a left wing government, the fact the press is the enemy of the people was still being used on for the left wing government. And I think that it is something because, well, times change. That's reality. Now, I will grant it, then I don't know how that works in America. But if you think about that, if you place context on this one, and I may be wrong, I may be completely off the bat here, but in a very polarized world than we see Red Sun. We have this gigantic alien monstrosity, and you can be 100% sure that the press would be unified. I don't think what we would have, like Hollywood, that on our reality would really happen in this reality. We not have the press being infiltrated. I think I may be wrong, but now and again that may be me overthinking the movie because Lloyd's Lane is portrayed as a very strong character, pro-America and pro-democracy and all of that. Although, yeah, during the Bizarro incident on the movie, it's a little bit debated her way, but most likely during the entire movie, she's still very supportive of blacks and everything around that. It does show that she's not the enemy of the people; she's the enemy of the communism here, the communists here. So I don't know. I can give then this point can be interpreted many ways, not only on the oh they are digging on Trump. There is one that maybe I can believe it's a more direct, and I would probably use that, but it's later on the movie, and let's see if he's gonna use it or not.
And trying to manipulate us all the time, which was true even more so back then during the Cold War when we didn't have as much free speech or internet stuff to fact check the stories out there. The tides quickly change in the Red Sun story though, starting with this encounter between Superman and Lois Lane actually. Later in the next scene, Lois gives Soviet Superman a file that reveals his communist government has secret gulags or very brutal work camps that
So it does make sense then that Superman would have this line of thought. You have to remember that on this movie, he is like treated as Stalin's son, even. So he would be heavily indoctrinated under the Soviet agenda, and I don't think would be far from it if, like, oh, he sees propaganda, American propaganda saying the communists are evil. Well, he would. It's far okay to believe then you would be indoctrinated to believe then, well, it's lies, and they are just doing that against the people and all of that.
are very oppressive to citizens who often die trying to provide for and work for the USSR or the United Soviet Socialist Republic. Then, when Superman discovers that this file is accurate and he finds those evil work prisons, he turns into a good guy and tries to save them. Superman goes to those gulags and frees the struggling workers, and even Soviet Superman takes out their Russian leader, Joseph Stalin, a fictionalized version of the actual leader of the USSR at the time, who's actually
That's an interesting point because remember when oh he said then oh they humanize the enemy, the communist, the enemy. Uh, I don't think so because the gulags are show very interesting way. Has it show there was people dead on the place, there was people being tortured, on the like for public parole, like people to see, and one of the simple reasons why people were arrested on the gulags was not only for work, like people who are against the government, people who are show being pro-government, but people who knew Superman was there, and that is an interesting. There was a point, just the fact of the girl who was put under the gulag. She literally the reason why she was there was because she knew Superman. And she was a communist. She was a full blown. She's the one who said to Superman to go and be a communist, to go and use his power and benefit of the state and all of that bullshit, and no one's believe.
not made out to be that bad of a guy in this movie, which is weird.
He has gulags, and he is a fucking coward. I think he's made out to be really bad.
because Stalin and his policies killed millions. Regardless, there's a dramatic killing of Stalin here, with Superman taking him out with laser eyes and everything. And from here on in the movie, the tables sort of flip. Superman becomes a kind of hero again, albeit one who becomes sort of overwhelmed with power. But regardless, the US side starts to look more and more evil from here out too. Lex Luthor, the leading American character, even steals Superman's DNA, hoping to make a clone or American version of Superman.
I don't think this is right. Okay, he does. I don't believe US is shown to be the villain. I think US is even shown to be more of a hero, the underdog. It's even shown to be more of an underdog. Although the Bizarro scene is pushing a little, but we have to remind that we're still seeing it's that quote unquote movie magic. We know what to expect from Lex Luthor. We know what to expect from Superman. So we still have to have they follow some of the same things, some of the same points. That's why the Bizarro scene probably happened that way, and that's why we see Superman still acting like he's the virtued one, even if he isn't. For example, one of the wars then Superman win for the Soviet is the Korean one, and I don't see the way they show it's not like a oh what a great victory we were making the world a better place. It's just a bet.
And for their own side in order to try and compete with the communists. Here it's also worth noting that the Jimmy Olsen character gets blackwashed for this movie for virtually no reason other than they wanted to have more minority characters. Just saying, another woke moment.
Wrong. They want to do a Obama joke. Of all the people, I think if he's trying to push this, I don't believe it in because look, if he didn't say the name of the character, don't you? Wouldn't you say this is Obama? It looks exactly. So I think yeah, this is probably one of the point. And spoiler warning, he ended up being the next president after Luther.
For our checklist. When Lex Luthor finally finishes his Soviet Superman clone, they end up naming him Superior Superman instead of the traditional Bizarro name that's used for Superman clones in the comics.
Well, I have to say, it would be a very bad thing name your super weapons, your super soldier, uh, Bizarro. So naming Superior Man, it's okay.
Other changes to this clone include his boxy, US military style American crew haircut, kind of looking like Drew Carey from The Price is Right. And also, this Superman clone has a suit with the letters US on it, instead of the traditional S for Superman. And
Again, it makes sense. The symbol, to be honest, I think what they should do is place like something or the eagle or really match the flag on the chest because well, Red Sun, the Superman, he's using the sickle and the hammer and sickle, so it makes sense then to use something that does symbolize the United States.
lastly, and probably most noteworthy here is the new Superman clone starts off by immediately saying America first. This is another line and idea that comes straight from the mouth of President Trump himself. And the way the clone says this shit here is really awkward too. Right after he's introduced by Lex Luthor, a demonstration shows bullets bouncing right off the clone's body. And well, after that he throws his hands in the air and says America first. Really.
Well, if you remember how the Red Sun was introduced, it's kind of the same. He was introduced by really people just unloading the magazine of their weapons and even a flamethrower. So yeah, it's similar. They just throwing a parallel, a different one, but I don't think this is a bad point. And even the
Really
America
loud, pointing
First
his
makes
hands
sense.
up, acting like some kind of super soldier. Not the worst thing to say either, really, but you gotta keep in mind who's behind this project. Liberal writers and SJW pushers are the ones making this script and movie, and they're not
Are
saying these
they?
phrases in good faith. In fact, when they repeat Trump lines like this, like the press is the enemy of the people or America first, they're actually doing so as a sort of dog whistle, and they're saying these characters are wrong or racist or bad or something. They basically take the worst and most negative interpretations of these ideas as possible. Like for the America First phrase, we might think that's just a good idea and a supportive,
And it
positive,
is?
pro-United States of America statement, or it's just great that our president has put our country first above others. But according to leftists, this is wrong. They see this as xenophobic, and they think it's wrong to put America first for anything because they think we're evil racists who don't deserve anything, and they're anti-white people. So anyone who says something like this is a terrible, offensive, racist, and xenophobic person, at least according to left-wingers. Next, things get
But in some way, you still can simply push this to be a okay thing. It's okay to say America first, and well, in the context of a Cold War, if you create a Superman, I think it is right. That was probably what he would say.
pro-alphabet people here when they introduced the Wonder Woman character, although she wasn't LGBTQ in the comics or in the original Red Sun story. But in this woke movie adaptation, Wonder Woman is now a lesbian. Not just that, but
Is?
she goes full-blown feminist, SJW, and anti-male almost every time she's on screen here. For example, when she first meets Soviet Superman at this formal party, they talk and become friends quite quickly. Superman even
Okay.
thinks it may get romantic, but then Wonder Woman drops the fact that she's into chicks only, and DC making its characters lesbians for woke reasons is nothing new either.
Okay. Thinking now, I kind of remember the scene. But there is an interesting point that I would like to take on this. In most of the of everything, Wonder Woman is always, and that's the thing. The Amazons always called the rest of the world the men's world. That is a point. The comics were that, the movie was that, and everything was that. I don't think that was different because men is a thing, and they have men and women, and Amazons is another fucking thing. Besides that, there is another point to take. I think the dialogue is something like he goes to approach to kiss her, and she says, "Oh no," and it's something like, "Oh, I live in a island full of girls. Make the math," or something among those lines. Then Superman like, "Oh, thank God, I'm okay with that." She looks to him with the most straight face. What the fuck, mate? So I don't know if she is, or if it's just like, okay, is she? She knows enough about it? I don't know. Even if she is, let me tell you something. During the entire movie, except for the last, she only met communists. So, even I would grow lesbian. That is a joke. Not entirely. If I were in her place. And to be honest, with the interaction that she has, again, only interacting with the Soviet Empire, and at this point is already considered the Soviet Empire, yeah, it does make sense then she would really be wary of the outside world.
Here they did the same thing with a version of Harley Quinn in either the comics or a new TV show or something. Anyway, back to Red Sun, the movie. In it, Wonder Woman becomes Soviet Superman's good ally, despite the awkward refusal of his romantic advances. But again, Wonder Woman also talks about not trusting men all the time and wanting to go back to her all-girl society all the time because she claims it's better, a claim which
No. And even there is the moment when the Queen Hippolyta says, "Oh, cut the contact with the Empire." She's the one who's saying, "No, I won't give Superman a chance," or stuff like that. She wants to Day? I don't really know. There is the dialogue where, for example, okay, it's early on the movie here, so let's see if he point that out when they pass that point.
which would never be cool if someone said an all guy society was better. And this is just classic woke pro alphabet propaganda nonsense, and it shows this movie's getting woke in more ways than one. Later, the story flashes forward a few years, and now we're at a DC Comics version of the building of the Berlin Wall. This was a big event in the Cold War, too, and a milestone for the US Russian conflict at the
I will say, this is the most what the flying fuck and why they did. So I don't think I can disagree with him much on what him gonna say. Because yeah, this time is the U.S. who built the wall, and there is the main reason why the wall was being built is because well, Superman is really pushing on military aggression against the Soviet Union. Holy shit, against the U.S. and the Allied forces. So it does make sense, but well, let's see.
the time. And now, the way this comes up today in the movie, well, the wall in the story also doubles as a metaphor for the current US president and his project of building a wall at our modern US southern border between Mexico. Yes, we get another anti Trump dig here, because of course we do. Obviously, building the wall and having more security have been big points in Donald J. Trump's political career starting from about 2015. And the way this Red Sun movie references and goes against that is pretty obvious and cringy. Basically, Soviet Superman gives this anti-American speech here about needing to accept people and open our borders. And then he destroys the Berlin Wall right after it got finished. And well, anti-wall, pro-open borders, anti-American rhetoric that also sympathizes with and fantasizes about being full-blown communists. Well, where have we seen all this before? Oh yeah, Soviet Superman is basically an embodiment of the modern-day Democratic Party in the United States and the pro-Bernie, pro-communist supporters and their groups that are growing in our nation. In the end, Soviet Superman.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny he's pretty much right about that point. Superman does embody a lot of the, as I said, liberal guy who believed in he will do everything right if he only had this chance, and the only difference and now is Superman really has magical fucking abilities. And I don't know what he's gonna say about this point, but let's see, because there is an interesting point.
Plan sort of works. In his world, the USSR appears to be doing better by the end. It's thriving, even maybe doing a more successful job at serving for and providing for its people than the US, which appears to be poorer and more dysfunctional in this alternative timeline. Ultimately, Superman turns Russia into a sort of utopia, albeit that's partly done by implanting sorts of mind control devices into many of his people. And another thing that's confusing here is why Soviet Superman never finishes and goes after the US. He keeps
Okay, now it's that moment when we have to think about stuff. First, at this point in time, Superman has really reprogrammed and have control of quote unquote have control of Brainiac. Not only that, not only that, but Superman is a fucking gigantic war machine. Any conflict in you can think that any conflict in the Soviet Union did, Superman single-handed won that conflict for a day. So it does come to mind, and for example, the Afghanistan combat and the version of when they invaded Afghanistan. It's probably clear to believe that Soviet Superman just charged ahead as himself. And that would change the way that the war would work, and, well, economically would probably have a great advantage. Not only that, but Superman has a fucking alien AI working for him. It does make sense then, well, you have a super advanced alien technology that you would be able to maintaining control of a better tech. You would have better thing because they have better technology and stuff like that. But it's not how the fucking movie ends.
keeps saying he wants them to fall apart and come to the communists on their own, which sounds nice and all, but it totally contradicts the fact that Soviet Superman is also mind controlling many of his own people, as just stated. I don't know. I think there's a few plot holes in this thing like this, mostly happening due in part to these woke SJW pro-communist and anti-US influences that are shoehorned into this movie's plot. A final example of this can be seen by this movie's ending, which sort of shirks the blame away from Soviet Superman, instead making his robot enemy turned ally Brainiac into the main villain. Here, Brainiac reveals he was in control the whole time and never truly was reprogrammed and a servant under Superman. But at the same time, really, if you're paying attention, Superman still made many mistakes and bad decisions himself, like the choice to mind control his people with implants. But between Brainiac taking most of the blame at the end and Superman sort of redeeming himself by taking out the bad guy, well, the ending message of this becomes pretty clear. America is bad and Russia is good, and capitalism is bad and communism is good too. Essentially, this movie's trying to portray communism as a good system on its own, but it's just not implemented right, and it's constantly being taken over by bad people like Stalin and Soviet Superman. Now, keeping that in mind and keeping in mind the timing and tone and tint of all this, I think it's safe to say Superman Red Son has gotten seriously woke, and it's pro-feminist as hell, just like the last DC movie Birds of Prey. In addition, with socialism rising in the Democratic Party and them about to possibly nominate a virtual communist named Bernie Sanders, who had previously praised Russia and other dictator-run communist states, well,
Virtually? The motherfucker is a communist. Let's not beat around the bush. The man was drinking vodka shirtless on the Soviet Union. There is no way to not say that that motherfucker wasn't a communist. Is a communist. Bernie is a fucking commie.
well, with all that in mind, it's pretty hard to deny this film is a bit of a pro-communist propaganda piece itself, which is kind of ironic because they make fun of propaganda and this kind of rhetoric in the film. And what better way to make kids and teens think communism isn't that bad than to make one of our country's and the world's most famous characters, Superman, a sympathetic socialist, who even spouts anti-Trump lines and pro-progressive rhetoric. What do you guys think? Have you seen Superman Red Son? Does it
Okay, I'm going to go in a little bit of a rumble right now because I do believe that some points are wrong here. No, they don't believe then that is the case because, well, if you watch to the end of the movie, Superman decides to start living in America, even after everything. Yeah, that's a thing. That's why I said then, really, after all of these things, what happened is we have a full circle of the socialist millennial because after what are bit on their ass, they need to find a job and become productive members of society. That's what happened with Superman here. He dropped the whole Superman stuff and become a journalist. Not really said, but it's implied because he's on the crowd on the last part of the movie. Now, my opinion, yes, communism is bad, and the movie does bash this over the head. And when he says, "Oh, America is bad," I don't believe. For example, Lex Luthor became president. I think after Kennedy. Kennedy was was bad, and that was what happened. Then come Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor revitalized America in such a fucking way by the sheer amount of being Lex. Then the whole fucking world look said, "You know what? This fucking socialist bullshit's not working, and we have mind control slaves, and if we really say a word against or super commander overlord Superman here, we end up working on the laundry for the rest of our lives." So I think it's fair to say then, let's revolt. There is a interesting point where they are burning Superman effigy here. Like, it's a very interesting point. So I really don't believe they portray communism as good. I think they portray really well. And to point it out that fact, then I said, oh, Superman is really the millennial that sees how communism is evil. Even after he stops and he realizes how shitty everything he does and how shitty everything that happens with communism, all of that, he looks at and he sees then, well, I'm gonna stop and let's work to fix the problems, he sees is the giant communism monster there's there, and the movie is represented by Brainiac. Says, well, in the end, it doesn't matter. Communism is still here, and if you built this, and that is somewhat what the movie says. Superman allow Brainiac to do all of that. Allow Brainiac to mind control people. Allow Brainiac to not do stuff. And for example, one of the real only good things, good points there was in the movie. There is not about the movie, but good actions that some characters take, and besides Superman saving the gulags and stuff like that. But literally out of the way was Leningrad. I think it was Leningrad was taken by Brainiac. They place on the like same way, like they shrink the Sid and place on the dome or something like that. And Lex Luthor tried his best to solve that, and that is the big point. And I think they really pointed out, and I think it's Wonder Woman who does point it out. Then, in the end, no, it's Batman. Batman has a very good moment because Batman is a Russian terrorist on this movie. Uh, as you can see, and I don't know why he didn't talk a little bit more because Batman is a very interesting character. Where is him? I think it's around a. Yeah, this is Batman, and he says there's a large flash forward, and he grows old, and he becomes Batman. He's a terrorist, and he tries to finish Batman. And there is really a good moment where he says, "It doesn't matter." With all the sugar words and all of the things, then you guys says it doesn't matter. And he's saying about about communism. Then communism is just the same thing. People are saying the same stuff. The only difference is the mouthpiece. And he says that to Superman. And he tries to lock Superman away, kill him, so he can have his people free. And that is one of his points. I don't know why some of the points, for example, hell, Lex Luthor is so fucking amazing on this movie. Then he reverse engineer the Green Lantern ring, and he was able to replicate that. You see a whole Green Lantern troop go fighting Superman at the end, at the peak end of the movie, and the Americans win. Like, if Wonder Woman didn't say, "You gonna stop," and it is over, or if you don't stop, we're gonna act, and that is something that I think was a little bit meh. I think she still likes Superman, and that's why I think she is lesbian is not worked that much because she still like him enough to save him because she would probably die there, and that is the thing. So in the end, Superman really sees that communism is bad. America, Lex Luthor is not more the president. They have their Obama joke at the end, but is really a pro-American thing. Well, even if the entire world abandoned America at that point, we would still help people survive after. I think it's a very good thing, and yeah, Lex Luthor was a great president. By the sheer might of being a badass businessman, he was able to bring America from the Great Depression, back from it, to the end of the movie. And it's not the superpower, it's not anything like that that make it's the sheer example that he makes that destroyed the Soviet Union, the Soviet Empire in the movie. It's just that is like Superman is losing at the point then he decides to go fight Lex Luthor. Like there is revolts around a lot of people, a lot of places, call independence and all of that. And that's why I don't believe this is a very pro-left movie. It's a very neutral. It's we give you what happened and I think you're smart enough to figure out your own. Well, let me know what you believe on the comments. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I was right, maybe he was wrong, maybe he was right. See you guys next. Maybe I am punching a lot out above my weight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. This was the video. If you enjoyed, leave it a like. If you didn't, leave it a dislike. If you have anything to say, please leave a comment. And if you want to see what the hell is gonna be coming next on this mess, subscribe. And see you guys on the next episode.